Welcome to another edition of Politics Done Right. Today, we're honored to have John Rosenthal. John Rosenthal is the state representative of Texas House District 135. He's a mechanical engineer. We share the same alma mater in the University of Texas, Austin, which gives me quite a lot of pleasure that he's now running for Texas Railroad Commission. Let me first say welcome aboard Politics Done Right, my brother. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on the show today.
Well, absolutely. So I saw you over the weekend at one of our get together, and I hadn't been following a whole lot of what was happening in the state. When you told me that you were running, I said, we've got to have you on. We've got to have you on. Tell me a little bit about what does the Railroad Commission job entail?
So it's a great question. First, we should be calling this the Texas Oil and Gas Commission because this is a body headed by 3 commissioners that regulates oil and gas operations in Texas, and that's drilling, production, pipelines, processing, chemical waste management, also some mining operations. And for those who are interested in renewable technologies, they have the primacy role for carbon capture, utilization, and storage operations too. So it's the Texas Railroad Commission, which is a legacy name left over from the 1800s. And they do everything from, the drilling permits and the chemical waste management stuff, enforcing the regulations on flaring, environmental regulations, and things like that. So this flying under the radar is one of the most consequential environmental jobs in the entire country. And also like, if you're concerned about your energy grid and keeping the power on in Texas during the next major winter freeze, this is a commission that would play a crucial role. And actually, it was their failure, which was a critical part of the cascade failure that we experienced for Winter Storm Uri.
Now, what is the interface between that? Because you also told me that they take care of flaring, et cetera. What's your interface with, let's say, the TCEQ?
TCEQ is the enforcement arm. So Texas Commission on Environmental Quality are the folks that are actually supposed to be measuring, enforcing, they work hand in hand. So TCEQ for the oil and gas operation portion of it would take direction from the Railroad Commission.
Now, I know that your background, like mine, you're like a mechanical engineer, which means that not only would you be there regulating, but you actually will understand most of the concepts of what's going on from all those old wells that are still out there, et cetera, which is something I'm going to want to talk about. But before we get into the technical aspect, I want to get a little bit political. With respect to what is occurring on who is, I think currently you are the only person on the Democratic side running. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And right now, I think there are 2 or 3 people running on the Republican side.
Yes, that's also correct.
And I think there's a special person running, and Jim French is currently running, but there's a special person by the name of Beau French that has a quite an interesting past. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that? Because who knows, maybe we'll try to see if he'll talk to us and explain himself.
That would be interesting if you could get Beau French on your program. I think that would be a pretty wild experience.
Yes, it would.
So first, I'm going to toot my own horn. 30 years of oil field experience, 30 years of engineering, 25 plus of that oil field. And I did work in almost every aspect of the oil patch, mostly providing equipment and services. I did installation and commissioning. I did repair work. everything from design to installation to fixing what was broke. So, and then after 30 years in industry, now I am in my fourth term in the Texas House. So I've got a little political experience, if you will.
Wait,
now,
it has been 8 years already? Or going on 8 years already?
It's 7 right now, and it will be 8 by the time the term is up.
Wow.
In December of 20.
I still remember when you turned that Republican county or that Republican district blue. I remember when you turned it blue.
You know, and folks thought that this was an impossible race, an unwinnable election in a deep red seat against a long-term incumbent. And we had an army of volunteers and a relentless campaign that just would not be denied. And we ended up flipping a district that was R plus 10.
Yeah.
It was R plus 10 in 2016.
And you won it plus 2.
Yes. 12-point swing.
Hey, look, I remember well. Those were the days things were going pretty strong. I remember well. Now, look, I know that you have the qualifications, and I want to touch on that. And I want to continue on touching on that because, again, I think some of the stuff that we're going to discuss going forward people will need to understand what's going on. But before we get there, going back to the politics, the people that you're running against, both French. First of all, tell me why it is that based on those who are running right now, it is in the interest of, in your opinion, is in the interest of Texans to switch who they're going to vote for.
So it depends. If you're going to vote for me, it's in your interest to go ahead and vote for me.
Well, so I can't tell people how to vote, but I can tell people what are the options that they're voting.
I can tell you how to vote. I'm a partisan. I'm fine with that. But let's talk about who's running as a Republican in this race. So you have an incumbent named Jim Wright, who's the current commissioner. Now, rumor has it that Jim Wright was supported by the Cradocks. So I know this is inside baseball. Christy Craddock is the longest serving member of the Railroad Commission right now. And she grew up in a West Texas oil family. Her father is a current member of the House of Representatives, the longest serving representative in the history of the state, former Speaker Tom Craddock. And of course, their family makes their money in the oil field. And Christy is the most competent of the 3 commissioners, for sure. She's a corporate lawyer who grew up in oil field work. Wayne Christian is the other one, who's just a partisan, really a partisan hack, former state senator. Each of the 3 commissioners serve 6-year terms, and they're staggered. So one comes up every 2 years. The current one up this time is named Jim Wright, who paints himself as kind of a good old boy rancher, Texas guy. And he is. He also makes tons of money running a chemical waste management company that I have been told was being investigated and for having their permit revoked. And then he got elected to the Railroad Commission and all that went away. So just your typical.
Whoa, wonder how did that happen?
Just your typical corrupt, self-dealing, Republican elected official. So that's who the incumbent is. And he beat a very qualified individual who obviously a Republican also, but 6 years ago when he first won election, he beat a guy named Ryan Sitton, who was the only engineer on the board. And I think the rumor actually behind the scenes is that this powerful oil family, the Cradocks, helped Jim Wright to defeat Ryan Sitton because he wanted to do stuff like end flaring and enforce environmental regulations and that sort of thing. So then you have this guy who's the good old boy rancher that happens to have, a multi-million-dollar chemical waste management company that now he is supposed to be regulating. So that's your incumbent. The first challenger to actually file and enter into this race is a guy named Beau French, who's was the Republican, the Tarrant County Republican Party chairman. So Beau French, Republican Party, Tarrant County chairman, such an egregious racist and literal Nazi, said and put out statements, and he did some push pull thing.
I want to read a statement because this is interesting. He said, "All I can say is avoid city centers, stay strapped, carry spare mags, and have a plan to keep your family safe. When the hordes are chimping out, everyone is at risk." You know what he's inferring? He then followed up with November 1st, 2025, National Chimp Out Day. It's going to be lit. The word chimp is hysterically used as a racial slur, targeting whom? Black folk. And this is in Tarrant County. This is who used to be the chair of the Republican Party in Tarrant County. And now he's running for a statewide office, state railroad commissioner.
Correct.
And there's more, but
so the guy is so egregious that last year, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick called for his resignation as the Tarrant County Republican Party chair. I don't know how bad you have to be for Dan Patrick to call for your resignation as a far-right Republican in this state, but that's pretty bad. And his campaign announcement says a couple of things. He wants to run for the Railroad Commission to defend Texas against the Islamic invasion.
Yeah.
So he wants to halt the Islamic invasion of Texas, which I didn't.
You didn't know what's happening, right?
I don't even think it's a thing, but if it was, I'm not sure how you're going to halt that invasion by regulating pipelines.
I don't know either.
I'm sure he has a plan. I'm sure. And then, of course, he wants to end DEI at the Railroad Commission because I'm certain that's a rampant problem at the Railroad Commission of Texas. So you're going to have this bold anti-Semite, literal Nazi, and I think he's going to win because he'll have money to work with. He'll have support, and it's a sad statement and a horrific evolutionary step that this is who we will probably see as the Republican nominee to regulate one of the most nonpartisan things I can think of.
Now, does he have supporters?
The infrastructure of the state, the literal energy infrastructure of the state.
Does he have supporters that are openly giving him donations?
I'm sure.
By name?
I'm sure.
Wow.
So I have not looked. We'll see the first public campaign finance reports in January because the reporting period will end at the end of this year. And so it will be second week of January or something when that stuff is due, and that will be public. So you'll see who's giving him money. But I'm willing to bet money that he'll raise more money than I do by the end of the year. And I don't know about Jim Wright. He'll have the support of the industry and the industry insiders. Very commonly support the incumbent. It's an incumbent-friendly environment. He'll have the support of the Texas Oil and Gas Association. I'm quite sure those are the folks who really have virtually unlimited resources and will elect who they want. They will oppose me with everything they have.
The thing about it is I think you've already proven before that money doesn't always win elections. And I think there are several times that you've been outspent, correct?
Every time except this cycle.
Every time except this cycle. Well, this cycle hasn't occurred yet, right?
I mean the one.
Okay, the 2024. Okay, got you.
The 2024 election, to be fair, I wasn't opposed. But in 2018, I was outspent 7-1. In 2020, I was outspent 2-1. And actually, to be completely candid, in 2022, I don't know what the other guy spent.
Okay. Well, here's the deal. Let's get to some important stuff now. Texas communities from Houston to the Permian Basin live with the consequences of what? You spoke earlier about flaring, methane leaks, and dangerous wells. What would you do on day one to shift the Railroad Commission from protecting industry to protecting people. And I know you would likely be the only Democrat out of the three. So how would you persuade folks? Will you use the shaming methodology? What would you use to get the job done?
So I think it's a common sense approach. And what you have to do is build coalitions. It's the same thing that I do in the Texas House. I've been pretty effective working with the majority party. And I do that a lot of times by not taking credit for the work and let them own it. So the Railroad Commission makes rules, but the laws are enacted by the legislature, right? So there are already laws in place about with limits on storage and on flaring, and they're just not being enforced. So the challenge will be to bring at least one of the other two commissioners on board. And honestly, I think I should be able to work with either of them. The one that's longest serving that I talked about earlier, Christy Craddock, I have a very good relationship with already. And so it'll just be a series of candid conversations. And you want to talk about the politics of these situations. It goes like this. What y'all have been doing just lost you a seat on the Railroad Commission. And this is where you've lost a political race statewide for the first time in 30 years. And so I'm just going to suggest that it's the will of the people that we moderate our stance and enforce the regulations that are on the books. And the bonus is you save money, you preserve the gas that's being burned, and you can use that to make energy out of. Everybody actually wins. And a large part of the reason it's not being done is because some of these smaller operators are just too lazy. So with too lazy or unwilling to part with a few dollars to put in place the stuff to capture the gas instead of burning it, because burning it's easy. Light a flame on fire. You see them all the time when you drive through
Midland, Texas. It's all over the place.
It's all over the place. So you just help them out a little bit with some containment equipment and let them keep the gas and sell it. It becomes an asset instead of a liability and a waste.
And so that's interesting because you would think that with the price of gas right now, it is a lot better to try to capture the gas than to flare it. Now, what about flares that occur at refineries? That has a different process, right? So
yeah, it's a little bit of a different thing. And the refineries. The large refineries are by nature larger operations, and they do a better job of controlling that stuff themselves. And it's a very different environment. You still see flaring, but as a percentage of production and the product that moves through there, it's very, very small, and it's usually within reasonable limits. So the goal is to dramatically reduce flaring and also end routine flaring of the larger amounts that could be captured and used for energy. So we can't expect to flip a switch and have everything change all at once, but I do expect that both the tailwind of a political win and the sensible sort of brass tacks approach where we're going to capture this, use it as a resource, and that will help pay for the equipment that we're.
Yeah, it'll pay for itself in the long run. If
that's exactly
amortized, it pays for itself. All right, I mean, the commission is notorious for lax enforcement and revolving door with oil and gas lobbyists. How will you structurally insulate the agency from industry capture and restore public trust in the Railroad Commission?
Well, I don't know if I can restore public trust in the Railroad Commission, but I will give some balance to the board. And once again, enact sensible, pragmatic policy. The beauty of this is the people of Texas will have elected a commissioner that's independent of the Texas Oil and Gas Association, which is the big money lobbying firm. So if I take money from the operators, it will be to promote responsible energy production and development of new engineering technologies. So if you're the small little drilling company, in West Texas that just drills, finds an asset, produces it, makes some money, and then heads out, that's one thing. If you are Exxon, Chevron, British Petroleum, BP, Conoco, the large operators all are making huge investments in renewables. And one of the problems that we have in Texas that I see is we discourage that investment instead of encourage it. So taking an all of the above approach where we don't discriminate against any form of energy, I think helps win the day. Because again, it's an economic argument. It's more energy for the people moving in, for the infrastructure that we need, for the industry that we're trying to promote. And then the third part is it's good. It's good policy because by doing that, you create a bunch of new jobs too. It's an economic engine. So all of the above energy approach. And let's just see if we can't get at least one, if not both, railroad commissioners to come on.
Well, I mean, it seems like we've been making a big mistake in backtracking on renewable energy. I don't exactly know how it's affecting the Texas industry, the wind industry, which is we have the largest wind base in the country. I hope that our state would take positions that don't necessarily affect that.
So what's really great about the possibility of a Democrat winning this seat in particular is I will walk into the Capitol building and I will not talk. I'll talk to Democrats. I will walk in there specifically for the purpose to talk to my Republican colleagues and say, here you go. I'm here with the Railroad Commission because the people of Texas want us to employ an all of the above approach. And the reason that this is so important is because the last two sessions, the oil and gas folks have really gone after renewables by attacking their subsidies and refusing to finance incentive programs for those industries. And I think that we can really promote reversing that stance on legislation simply because I win, just because I'm in there and I can say I'm a symbol that shows you
of what Texans really want.
Of what Texans really want. And the reason that your side just lost its first statewide race in 30 years is because I told them we should have an all of the above approach to energy production.
Well, the last Democrat that ran for this job, I think his name was Bill Birch, that I interviewed a few times, more than once, actually. In fact, I interviewed him on his way to El Paso in his car one time. Now, what I did learn from him is that Texas is a state that likely has the most orphaned and abandoned wells. More importantly, we don't know where a lot of those are. And what he told me is in driving around West Texas, sometimes he would see on a back road, he'll see a pipe sticking out with a pressure gauge on it. And he'd look at the pressure gauge and he said, some of these things are going to blow. What are you going to do about trying to, because the only way you can lose where all these things are is where you have lack of regulations, and who don't like regulations that actually enforce a map of where all of these orphan wells are, so that one can actually go look at the understructure, which, as you know, many of them were done incorrectly.
It's true. This is a huge problem. And I think we're estimating 180,000 either orphaned or long-term inactive wells. There are, and that's what they know about. There's, and you'll forgive this language, some of those folks on ranches say they find wells that God didn't know about.
Right.
So there are holes in the ground that were punched 100 years ago, and not all this stuff was accurately recorded, categorized, and mapped. Also, what you're saying is the Railroad Commission, whether by hook or by crook, or just the fact that they're under-resourced for this monstrous task, they do not have the will or the capability to spend years and years trying to locate these things and assess each one, because that's what you have to do. And even the ones that have been plugged, even if they were properly plugged 20, 30, 40 years ago. Materials have changed, conditions have changed, and the way that we structured well casings, and the way that we sealed these things and the materials that we used, different 20 years ago than today. And so there needs to be regular monitoring of even the plugged wells, even if they were properly plugged and sealed and all that stuff. You need to monitor them. So it becomes a conversation of where you want to use your resources and lobbying to increase the budget. The only thing that I'll add to that is last session, and I was part of this, in the budget in the legislature, we gave the Railroad Commission an extra $100 million standalone from the regular budget to increase orphan well identification and plugging efforts. And that is a drop in the bucket when you're talking about
180,000 abandoned wells.
A single emergency plug when you've got a zombie well, a leaking well, or one that blows up, a single emergency operation can be $500,000 or more.
Now, there's something that's interesting about that, because you were talking about casings and so forth. When you have a case hole well, a lot of time that is just protect the parts of the well where you have water, where it interfaces with the water table, etc. Right now, in certain parts of West Texas, in fact, you now have, I think, fracking fluid, etc., bubbling up in certain little valleys where ranchers are, where they grow crop, etc. This is in one place or a few places that we know of. Now, there are two things that I don't know if a lot of people take into account. We just spoke about orphan wells, but there is a bigger danger when you have orphan wells and at the same time you have fracking. Because if you don't know where the orphan wells are and you're also doing some fracking, there's a possibility there of some sort of corruption in the ground structure that then causes these massive leaks, etc. What are you going to do about that?
Okay, so when we talk about fracking, that's short for fracture.
Right.
And what we're doing is they're setting off little explosions and they're fracturing
the rock.
Fracturing the rock formations to loosen up the shale oil deposits so that they're easier to remove. And this has been a great boom in energy production in Texas and around the world. But when you do that, you're fracturing the Earth's crust. Now, orphan wells is one thing. It's been shown that wells any closer than 3 or 4 miles might be affected by that. There have been cases where not the orphan wells, but the disposal wells. So what you didn't mention was sometimes when a formation has been played out and you've extracted as much of the valuable hydrocarbons out of it as you can get, then you have this natural underground, structure that holds pressure, and you can put your dispose of your waste products down there.
Right.
As long as you don't overpressurize it, regularly monitor it, it's actually a pretty efficient way to do stuff because it's already there. You don't have to build anything. It's, the thing is, if you've got an underground formation full of waste that's pressurized and then nearby you start breaking up the Earth's crust, you have no idea
when it's going to fracture.
How they're going to interact. And it is thought that this is the sort of thing that causes those earthquakes to happen, as well as eruptions of chemical waste, because it's chemical waste we put down there. It's called produced water. It's incredibly noxious,
toxic,
heavy with chemicals. It's water, but it's like 30,000 times heavier than ocean water. It's super noxious. And we just had the Houston Chronicle just ran an article about a geyser of produced water, chemical waste.
That was like several months ago in West Texas. Yeah.
Yeah, there was also one, but there's a brand new one just this week.
Oh, really? This week?
Yeah.
Where?
So it's also West Texas.
Okay.
And it's a different development. So, but a geyser of this stuff just shooting out of the ground, and this will poison the
whole land,
the groundwater for miles around. So it's important that we urge the legislature. So if the Railroad Commission itself won't change the regulations around this. So you're not supposed to fracture within 2 miles of an abandoned well or a storage facility.
But that doesn't make any sense, John. You don't know where the abandoned wells are.
So some you do and some you don't. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I don't know if you can, before you issue any drilling permit, if you can do a sweep of a 5 mile
survey. Yeah.
Because I think it should be at least 5 miles. I think 5 miles is a much more sensible number. 2 miles is too short a distance.
And as you know, with fracking, what you're doing is directional drilling anyway. So, I mean, who knows where you're at, right?
So you have to, just the same way you're supposed to check. You call a number and they check the ground before you dig a trench or your land pipe or anything like that. We should have that kind of service for issuing drilling permits too. So depending on the type of drilling, whether it's going to be directional drilling or if you're going to be fracturing, you should have you don't embark on that without a plan. There's a drilling plan that goes all the way from the top where you're going to enter the ground to the bottom target, whatever that happens to be at the bottom. You're going to have a path through the earth that goes where, especially in certain parts of Texas, you've got bedrock that's very difficult to drill through and you'll go around those rock formations. But if you're going to plan the drill path in that much detail, you could certainly do a survey across that path. And that's the sort of thing that we should be doing.
Right, to avoid all those toxic geysers, right? And the thing about it is, it seems to me like this could be put. Normally, what the Republican orthodoxy has been is that regulations are wrong, and many a times they've convinced some of their constituents that the reason that some of the problems they're having is in fact regulations are wrong. I think you've proven right here by orphan wells, by fracking near orphan wells and all of that, you've proven why regulation is extraordinarily important. So when I think you have the ability, as you're campaigning, in areas outside of the areas that are friendly to you, to show why you are an ally and the others are just par for the course. Your thoughts? So
it's part of the campaign plan. If a Democrat is going to win a statewide race, it's just like a Democrat winning. Well, to me, I would model it similarly to winning a seat in a deep red district. You have to have Republicans to vote for you, and they don't have to be the wild-eyed MAGA nut jobs. Like, let's appeal to conscientious conservatives, and let's appeal to Republican-leaning voters who would not consider themselves environmental conservationists, but they run a deer ranch or a citrus grove, or they have hunting operations, farming operations, ranching. Their cattle interests.
Are there kids that want to go to a park?
Let's talk to everybody in West Texas who hasn't been able to drink water out of their faucet for the last 2 years because it's been poisoned by the oil and gas industry and say, would y'all like some sensible regulation? Like, we don't want to kill the industry. We need all the business. We need the jobs. We need the energy. But we also need for your children to be able to drink water out of a water hose like I did when I was a kid. And
not worry about growing a sixth finger.
Yeah, whatever. So I honestly think that there are a slice of either politically uninvolved or, let's say, right-leaning folks who I think this argument will resonate with.
It's interesting because that's the last question that I had for you, and it went as follows: Democrats haven't won a statewide seat in Texas in decades. Why is the Railroad Commission the race where that streak can break? And how will you communicate its importance to voters who barely know what the agency does? And before you answer that, let me just tell you that I can tell you, first of all, speaking to a few Democrats that are going to be working on this plan of engaging their rural counterparts, I always tell them the story about somebody who said, as you approach them, I actually thought you used to have horns, but now I know different because you actually spoke to me. I'm just paraphrasing, but your thoughts?
So It's a great question. And it's the heart of why I'm so animated about this campaign, because there's a confluence of factors here. People are feeling the real consequences of tribal partisanship. And so the conversations that we have to have with those folks, first, I have to be willing to go to those places. So sure, I will spend a lot of time in the most populated counties, because the first element to having a statewide win is you need a strong Democrat turnout. We need a strong slate. I think we've got some great candidates, James Tallarico and others, that will be helpful. The second part is you need the moderates, right? The independents. And the third piece is you just need a little slice of moderate Republicans to vote for you. So you have to talk to those people. You have to elevate the profile of this race in particular. And for better or for worse, if I end up running a race against Beau French, that dude is going to put us on national television. I swear he's going to say some horrendous shit about me, and I am going to make hay out of that. And I'm going to be like, you want to make, Jew jokes, and I want to keep the power on in Texas. So Texans decide what you think is best for you. But the millions of dollars that I anticipate in earned media for fighting it out with a guy has no expertise at all, he's just a culture warrior, that helps to elevate the profile. But the third piece of this is I literally I did drilling, I did installation, I did commissioning. I can walk onto a drilling rig or a fabrication shop or a rig up yard, and I speak that language with those folks. And I am a, excuse again my swearing, but I am a noble dude when it comes to getting work done. And I've got old steel toe boots that are well worn to prove it. And I will walk into all those places, and I'm more than happy to talk to those people and take their questions. And let's just have a honest conversation. And the first person that asked me about men and women sports or bathrooms, I think the correct answer in that environment is, what does that have to do with keeping your energy grid up and running in the next winter storm? Because if you froze your ass off in your own house the way I did during that winter storm, you want to make sure that problem is fixed. And I guarantee you the crux of it was natural gas delivery freezing off. And so if you want to make sure natural gas flows in pipes even when it gets cold in this state, I know how to do it. I not only have a degree, but I've designed systems to flow gas in cold ocean floor environments all over the world. So you want your lights to stay on, or do you want to hire someone who wants to chase DEI ghosts?
Let me tell you, I hope that all our statewide politicians take that notion from you and realize that you have to engage everybody. Yes, you go to your population centers where most of your vote is, but you have to spend that time inside of all these other areas, whether they be rural, exurban, or wherever. So I'm glad to hear that you're doing that. John Rosenthal, State Representative of Texas House District 135, now running for Railroad Commissioner. Good luck. And I think they have the right kind of guy running in the race.
Thank you.
Thank you for having been on Politics Done Right.